We spend so much time building our skills, right? Learning the software, the formulas, all the technical stuff. We think that's what builds a successful career. But what if the real journey, the one that actually defines your success, isn't about what you know, but about how your thinking changes? Yeah, let's just dive right into that. You can have all the degrees and certifications on the planet, but what happens when the neat and tidy textbook answers just don't work in the messy real world? That's exactly the kind of critical mental shift we're going to unpack. So, our whole story kicks off with a pretty simple college assignment. We've got a student, Santiago, who has to do an informational interview. You know the deal. It's supposed to be a chance to get a real inside look at a career he's thinking about, to see what the day-to-day is actually like, not just what it says in the job description. Okay, so Santiago lands an interview with Alejandro Rossi, who's a senior financial consultant. His goal seems super straightforward. Just learn the nuts and bolts of the job for small and medium-sized businesses. He's walking in thinking he's going to hear all about financial models, projections, and balance sheets. The hard numbers. But almost immediately, Alejandro throws a huge curveball. He drops this dose of reality on Santiago, saying, "Hey, sometimes you build this absolutely perfect 3-year plan, and then, boom, a sudden change in government policy or a currency crash forces you to throw the whole thing in the trash. All of a sudden, the job isn't about making the perfect plan anymore. It's about what you do when that plan completely falls apart." And this is where things start to click. The job, as Alejandro explains it, really stands on 3 pillars. Yeah, sure, you've got financial analysis and strategy. That's the stuff Santiago expected. But it's that third pillar, crisis management. That's the real game changer. That's the part that reveals what the job is really about. And believe me, no textbook can ever prepare you for that. And then he drops the biggest bombshell of all. The work? It's not just about the numbers, it's about people. And more than that, it's often about families. Alejandro makes it crystal clear that in these small businesses, family emotions and dynamics can completely overshadow a financial statement. Suddenly, understanding psychology is every bit as important as understanding accounting. Wow. All right, let's take a second and really look at this map, because this is where it all comes together. This visualizes what we'd call Santiago's metacognitive shift. That's the fancy term for the moment he had to step back and completely reevaluate his own thinking. So look, on one side, you've got Alejandro's real-world experience, dealing with all this economic chaos. On the other, you have Santiago's pure academic skills. And the bridge connecting them? It's that huge realization at the bottom, the shift from focusing just on mathematical accuracy to something much bigger, organizational resilience. So think about that. Santiago walked in thinking success was all about being mathematically perfect, getting the right answer on a spreadsheet. But he walked out understanding that real success is about helping a company become resilient. It's not about building a flawless model. It's about helping a business survive, well, pretty much any storm that comes its way. So what's the big takeaway here? Is that your technical skills, they're really just the tip of the iceberg. What's truly holding everything up, down below the surface, is trust. Alejandro put it this way: the job is like 20% what you know and 80% who trusts you. Think about that. Because if nobody trusts you, your perfect analysis is, well, it's totally useless. Okay, so what does this mean for us? How do we actually use this? It's all about learning to be a bridge. Of course, you've got to have the technical skills. That's your foundation. But on top of that, you have to add a deep understanding of the human side of things. The fears, the hopes, the complicated relationships. Your real job becomes translating between those two completely different worlds. And Alejandro's last piece of advice just nails it. He said, learn to speak the language of the business owner, not just the language of the bank. And that's so true, right? Banks talk about numbers and risk. But business owners, they talk about their family's legacy, their employees, their passion. A truly great consultant has to be fluent in both. And that brings everything right back to you. Look, your technical skills will get your foot in the door, no doubt. But it's your ability to build trust and to translate that's going to build your entire career. So the real question to ask yourself is, in your own work, where can you be the bridge? How can you connect the data, the numbers, to the actual people whose lives depend on them?